So welcome to the show, Joel. So happy to have you today.
Yeah, great to be here, Jen. This is going to be
Yeah,
fun.
so everyone's very excited to hear your top 10 weight loss tips. And I know you've been doing this for a long time, so I'm super excited to hear about all these tips. But before we get started, what got you into life coaching? And for everyone that's listening, we just talked about a half hour before
Yeah.
we started recording. So we're going to have some fun today, but we want you guys to get the information out of it as well. So what tell us a little bit about you and your story and which got you here, because I think it's quite interesting.
Yeah, so the thing about it is I always joke around like there's people that have this, usually you always think about this very painful story that like someone got in an accident or somebody died and then their life changed. Well, I don't have necessarily any big monumental thing, but when I think back to when I was really like 18 years old, right? I graduated high school. All my friends were going to these amazing schools. I mean, name the school. They're probably all top 10, Stanford, UCLA, Berkeley. And I always joke around. You guys say,
Don't
do you
forget
know?
Cornell.
Oh, Cornell, sorry. I say, do you know where Joel was going? Nowhere. Like absolutely nowhere. I had no idea what I wanted to do. I was simply on the kind of the school industrial complex, go to school, get good grades, and that's all I knew. And then all of a sudden you graduate and you have to make a decision. And so I was really lucky in the sense that I had a friend who got me into selling Cutco knives. For anybody that knows what those are. And so when I
Yeah.
was so when I was 18, I started selling Cutco knives, and that was really a pivotal moment for me because it taught me not only just, okay, forget the sales skills, which I think are probably lacking for most people these days, like just general communication skills, negotiation, and just really learning how to talk to people. I think that's kind of, you know, I mean, it's being, we're forgetting about it. I mean, in some respects, right? We're Zoom, where our heads are on our phones, we have masks on. I mean, so people are forgetting probably that lost art. But it really got me down to this world of personal development. Tony Robbins, Jim Rohn, Zig Ziglar, Brian Tracy, all these amazing people. And it just set me off into this path of self-growth, really, and always wanting to have this growth mindset. So I say that as probably a pivotal point in my life when I was around 18. Fast forward, I ended up doing law enforcement for 14 years, being a first responder. And during that time, I was introduced to biohacking. And I've always been around, fitness and health and nutrition, but I never heard of some of the things that, as you know, we're exposed to. And, there were things like I can remember ozone therapy, red light therapy. I'm looking around in this world and I'm seeing these, Dave Asprey, these biohackers, Ben Greenfield, these guys are getting people better. They're healing their bodies naturally, which I'm a big fan of. And they're doing things that I never ever heard of. And I'm like, this is what I want to do. Especially in my own life. I was watching my mother at the time suffer with breast cancer. My mother in law had hypothyroidism, Hashimoto's, all these issues. And I'm thinking, this is an absolute travesty because I'm listening to these guys and they're healing people. And I know I can help get these people better. And I want to make that my life, my mission. And so that got me down the path. I went through a couple of life coaching certs with Dave Asprey's program, the Human Potential Institute. And then that set me off to studying under a naturopath doctor, Dr. Stephen Cabral, doing some integrative health practitioner kind of stuff. And here I am now helping a lot of men and women lose weight.
That's awesome. Yes, I'd argue instead of Joel going nowhere, Joel is going everywhere.
Yeah, I mean, I just say like that was a great time in my life. I think we all have that, that those times where we're just like stuck, we're lost,
Yeah.
and we don't know what to do. And so that was really my turning moment where I turned in. I was like, I need to learn as much as possible. I went down a deep rabbit hole of just reading as much as I could, and really just wanted to get better. And I always had that. I just didn't know where to put the energy, right?
Right. And it's also really powerful that you didn't just do something because you were supposed to and you should have done that. And, it would have met the norm in society to make sure you make a good wage and, you take home a salary and you go work the 9 to 5 and stuff, because that wouldn't have aligned with you and you wouldn't be the best at it and really have served the world as you're serving them now doing what you're doing. So I know you have a course going on
Yeah.
soon. I think it's for men on weight loss, and people can tune into your Instagram and hit you up there to sign up for it. But while I have you on the show, although the course might start before the show launches.
Course is going. So the course, yeah, it's all right. We're live. We're making it happen. it's an 8-week program, a coaching program with me. But and we can talk about that later. But and then it is going to be built out into a course. But right now it's live. We're doing 8 weeks of coaching with me.
That's awesome. I don't think anything can take the place with working with someone, but I do want you to share your top 10 tips today. So let's get on that. What's tip number one?
So here's the deal. We were talking about this offline and saying, hey, wouldn't it be great to have like 10 tips? And I was thinking, no, uh, no, it wouldn't. And matter of fact, you don't need 10 tips. You probably only need one tip. And I do have 10 tips for you guys, just so you know. But uh, realistically, and it's funny because you hit on something and you said, hey, isn't it great that you chose a career that like you're really passionate about, and that it's not just something that you're just kind of going through the motion in life, right? And you mentioned, I think, and that's the first tip, is a lot of what I do. First of all, yes, I do everything about my program deals a lot with diet and nutrition. But at the end of the day, like if your mindset is not correct, like I don't care about diet and nutrition. It's a complete waste of time, in my opinion. So many gurus out there talking about diet and nutrition. That's not even the first thing I talk about when you work with me. I talk a lot about mindset, clarity, goal work, because to me, those are the foundation and fundamentals. And if you don't have a solid foundation and you're not on solid footing, then you're going to eventually and over time, you're going to just treat my course, my program like some crash diet, and you're going to fail. It's going to be like, oh, that was fun. I did Joel's program and then went back to doing my normal habits a year from now. Like, I don't want to hear that. I want to hear that you're successful way after me. Like, this isn't some kind of, ongoing program too, where I want to see you for the next 12 months. Like, no, I want to get you going 8 weeks and then get you out. I want you to be good for the rest of your life. Now, of course, if you want to work with me longer, that's fine too. There's some people that need that accountability and coaching, as we know. I have coaches. I'm sure you have coaches. I love that, and I know that they're constantly tweaking me and giving me insight and making me better. So there is that aspect. Um,
So
but
is
yeah,
that your mindset and changing your paradigm pretty much?
yeah. I mean, so the number one thing for me is beliefs, right? And
Beliefs, got it.
and in a very simple manner, we can talk about it with what you just said in the job, right? So I think about back when I was a kid, right? Both my parents were blue collar workers. My dad was a police officer. My mom worked for the government, and I was told, and again, going back to when I was 18, right, being lost, being like, oh, what do I do now? My parents, you know, they were the type of people that said, Joel, go to school, get good grades, get a job, get a pension, and then in 30 years you can retire. Like that was the mindset. My framework for life was, oh, this is what people do. You work 8 to 5, you have a white picket fence, I guess. You have a house, you have kids, and you go on, right? And that's just not true. And so if you're just looking at it, and I think if anybody just looks at why are they doing what they're doing right now, they can probably tailor that back to some beliefs that they have. As I know you do a lot with like neuroscience and studying the brain, and that's something you're fascinated with, as well as me. And I think there's some pretty good, robust evidence showing that from 0 to 7 years old, like that's pretty much like the makeup of who you are for like the rest of your life. Obviously, there's going to be some changes. We know that, but really from 0 to 7 is like where you take on this personality, right? And you it's going to be hard to change. It's going to be harder for you to change after. And so I always laugh when I see clients or when I'm coaching people and I'm like, well, who's showing up right now? Is it you at 39 years old, or is it 7-year-old Joel? Right? So
Yeah.
so beliefs is a big one. And you think about it again, like how did I choose the career? How did I choose my career as a first responder? I go as and here's the funny thing, right? I think even as as you grow up, you always go, I'm never going to be like my dad. I'm never going to be like my mom. Okay, well, guess what? I became a police officer for 14 years. So even though I was like, I'll never do what he did. So again, beliefs, the subconscious, we don't even realize what's going on in the background. And so I work a lot, and I think you really need to start looking at your beliefs. And I would advise people to gain some awareness about what's true for them. What do they really believe? Do they even believe that they have the ability to lose weight, or are they like genetically susceptible to being fat for the rest of their life because they saw it from their parents or someone else?
This
So
is
that's the
huge. Yeah, this is huge. I did an entire podcast with Eliza Kingsford on this, these beliefs, these limiting beliefs, these identifying factors, everything that you're talking about. And I know some people are listening right now and they're like, yeah, yeah, yeah. Anyway, get to the point. What do I need to do? What's the one thing I need to do? What's the supplement I need to take? What's the, the most trendy diet? But it really comes down to what you believe. Like, do you believe you're an athlete or do you believe you're chubby? Do you believe like, you're not going to lose the weight? It really comes down to that belief. So, we talked about meditation and, your area of expertise with that before we started recording, and going within yourself and kind of realigning with how does that usually work to transition someone if they have such a core belief? Because I mean, I grew up little less than blue collar, like pretty poor.
yeah.
But my parents always said, you can do whatever you want. And I never questioned it because that was a core belief, even though I know they hadn't. And I was not only the first one to go to college, but an Ivy League college and medical school and, all these other things, only because that was such a core belief that like, if I want it, I can get it. Right. So, but if I didn't have that belief, it wouldn't, I would tell myself no before the opportunity arose. So the same thing happens with weight loss. Like I have so many patients and clients and colleagues and friends who they just can't lose weight. And they're like, please get someone on your show who can talk about weight loss. And the more and more I talk to experts like you, I realize like it's really going within yourself and realizing like, yes, you can do it. You have to want to do it. And there's not like a tip or a trick. It's just believing it can happen. So how do you flip that switch in people? I
So
know
here's
there's
the
not one way.
yeah, do this hack.
I know.
Okay, so I mean, it's hard. I mean, at the key focal point is going to be you got to have some awareness, right? You got to start tracking what you're doing. I am in a coaching mastermind right now, and we do a lot of work on the subconscious, including for myself, right? Like, hey, believe it or not, like I might be a very successful person, or on the outside, people are like, oh, look at him. He has a great life. What does he have to complain about? Whatever, right? I mean, I don't think about these things. I'm just saying how people might perceive it, right?
Of
Or
course.
look at him. He has all these Instagram followers. None of that matters. But again, people look at it that way. Um, and so, you know, guess what, guys? Regardless of all that, I have a lot of issues with self-worth. Like, am I good enough? Will people respect me if I do this? Can I
Mhm.
charge this much money? Right. And so when I go back and I look at my own life and I say, well, why do I have these self-worth issues? Why does that come up? Like I'm doing pretty well. Like, why is it still an issue for me? And I always go again, I go back to the 0 to 7 time frame, and I can't pinpoint it because I don't know exactly, but I can tell you this. I remember one time when I came home from school and I got like a 95% on a spelling test or something in school, and I showed my mom. That's what I did. My mom was, oh, here's my test scores. I showed her this, and she said, looked at it and said, huh, good, but how come you didn't get 100?
Mhm.
And it's those ideas that I internalize that moment as, oh my God, like I'm not good enough. Like my mom doesn't value me unless I get 100. And my mom could have meant nothing by that comment. She meant nothing by it. She legitimately was just like, "Oh, like do you think she was really like I'm going to like shame this kid and make him feel bad?" No, she was not thinking that. She loves me. She was thinking, "No, I'm serious. Like I'm just curious why you didn't, Joel. She probably was thinking we studied, we practiced, like you're better than that." But I took it, I'm not good enough unless I get 100. Now, here's the interesting thing. That's probably what drives me today in many ways, is always having to prove myself and excel and be better. So in some ways it's probably motivated me and been a little bit of fire, throw some gasoline on my fire. But at the same time it can hinder me, right? So it's very fascinating. And again, I mean, how do you get better at that stuff? It takes a lot. It takes, I think it starts with a lot of awareness.
Mhm. Yeah, the awareness. And we, before we started recording, we were talking about my experience of 40 years of Zen. And the brain memories are actually very interesting because you go back and experience these memories. And, some people may say, well, that memory is not really significant. But out of all the millions and millions and millions of memories that we have, why do you remember that one? Because it is significant. So you work through this whole process, kind of like what you were doing. And then you think about what's the gift, right? The gift is your drive now. So, what we have the ability to do is do like a repattern, almost like a new pattern of memory, where you can go back and say like, I was the most athletic kid in the playground playing. And you actually start identifying with that. Or my mom was really proud that I had 95. And it seems kind of crazy, but like we have the ability to reset these patterns and
Yeah.
form new patterns and new pathways to almost make us believe they're true. So that's really great. So you know, everyone listening, so having that awareness of your beliefs, and then doing your best with some help, obviously if you have the capability to have help from a coach, and work with someone like Joel, that will help change your mindset and then change your belief pattern and shift your paradigm. So that's beautiful. That's number one. Okay,
Boom.
number
Number one. And
number one.
it only took me like 15 minutes to explain it.
Well, it's very important.
But
So
don't
okay.
worry, guys. I promise the other ones will be much faster.
And really easier to implement, I'm sure.
Really easier, yeah. But that's the core of the work, right? That's the core of the work. I always like to use this concept that I stole from Kelly Starrett, who's a big mobility and CrossFit guy, and he talks about running and your running gait, and he talks about this concept called the tunnel concept. And the idea is that if your gait or your structure as you're entering the run, as you enter the tunnel, as you're about to begin your gait, if it's off, then you're going to exit the tunnel in this messed up pattern. You're going to have a bad running gait. And then guess what? That gait's going to continue and you're going to have knee pain or whatever. And so it's the same thing. I feel like when whether you're doing my program or anybody else's, if you're entering the tunnel on this shaky ground, like I say, that's the foundation, is the mindset. If you're entering that tunnel on shaky, faulty ground, well, it doesn't matter all the mobility hacks or all these hacks that we can do. None of that's going to matter because you're going to exit the tunnel the same way, maybe a little bit better, but so
Yeah.
I love looking at it that way.
You're right, though. Beliefs are so huge because think about how we used to believe people couldn't run a sub 5 minute mile. And then as soon as that was broken, now everybody's doing it, right? So,
100%. I
yeah,
love
look
that. Yeah.
around, look at all the other people that are doing the things that you want to accomplish. And that's how I got through med school. I'm like, if that guy can do it, I could do it. So it helps sometimes, thinking positively, of course.
Yes, yes.
Okay, so number two.
Number two, I think, again, going along with beliefs, you got to have clarity. You got to have clarity on what it is that you're trying to accomplish.
Give me an
You got to
example. Like instead of just saying like I want to lose weight, it's like I want to do X, Y, and Z by this period of time in this way, or
Yeah, I mean, here's the thing. We all know, we've all read, oh, you have to have SMART goals, specific, measurable, actionable. I mean, yeah, time restricted. Sure. I mean, I guess I think those things are good, but yeah, I think, it's fascinating. I'm always amazed at how many people, and I'm like, hey, one of the first things I ask is, hey, so do you have a journal? They're like, nope. I'm like, do you write down your goals? They're like, nope. And I'm like, wow, really? In my head, I'm like, man, I've been doing this again since I was like 18. Like that was like fostered into me and, drilled into me, especially from like sales and stuff. So writing down goals, that would be one way to get clarity, right? That's just a simple way. And I think really what I like to do is I'm a big believer in priming the mind. I'm a big believer in uh, writing down things in the morning. I'm a big morning person, so writing down things, giving gratitude, and figuring out what my mission is today. And I think a big question I'm constantly asking myself is like, who do I want to be today? How do I want to show up today? Who am I going to be? Because guess what? Like, again, people think it's very easy to just, be, let's say, be joyful, or oh, he's just always happy. Yeah, there's things that, we do to, I mean, there's some naturalness to being happy and stuff, but I think you have to cultivate some of these. I have to be constantly reminded. A great example for me is I'm very, very goal oriented and I can accomplish and crush a lot of goals. But guys, I have two young boys. I have a 7-year-old and a 4-year-old. I don't care what Tony Robbins hack or what speech you heard. Raising kids is completely different. It will challenge every book or whatever you've ever read about goal setting and clarity and all the things that I'm talking about. Kids will challenge that. I mean, it's amazing. And so one of the things I have to do is I have to constantly prime my mind with my kids. I have to constantly ask myself, like, hey, what might trigger me today and how am I going to react? Because if I don't do that work, you can best believe, again, I'm going to go back into my old belief system. Because guess what? I was raised a different way than the way that I'm trying to raise my kids. Okay. I was raised in a way that, you know, uh, I don't want to say we don't care about your opinion, but like, how about this? How about this? Uh, if you do something wrong, there's a consequence. Like there's a punishment. You're going to go to your room, you're going to do this, whatever. Now, there's a lot new psychology, as we know, in how we raise children, that maybe consequences really aren't the best thing for our kids. I used to get spanked, for example, right? Now we're saying, should we be spanking kids? Because now you're probably going to develop fear in your kids. And I had a good, healthy dose of fear of my father and my mother. And believe me, I didn't get spanked a lot, and it wasn't that, but that's my internal belief of them.
Or
I don't want to.
anger. It
Yeah.
created anger in me. I remember thinking, I'm never going to hit my kids. I was so awful. I would yell out loud, it doesn't hurt until they broke the wooden spoon of my pot
And
because it made me so angry.
yeah. And where did you get those? That's from your upbringing, your beliefs. And
Yeah.
then you're like, well, this is how it needs to be. Guess what? I
Yeah.
have all those things going on in me. So that's my natural reaction, is to be triggered by my kid when he tells me no.
Of course.
So I have to do a lot of work on that. I got to prime my mind. I got to get clarity for the day. I got to say, like, who am I trying to be right now?
Hmm.
Because the day is going to take you the way the day wants to. So many times I hear clients, and I was just talking to one the other, it's like, what's your routine? Like, what do you plan on? How's this day going to look? And it's like, oh, I don't know. Well, guess what? The day's going to take you there, whatever way the day wants. And how
Yeah.
often are we like, man, I don't even know what happened that day. I just got so busy.
So
It's
there's
like,
some things you have control over, and then there's obviously many things you don't, especially when it comes to children. There's a
yeah,
large unpredictability factor. So the things that we have control over. So are you a big proponent of trying to get workouts done in the morning, or are you going to get to that?
I don't care again. So the funny thing about me, Jen, is I don't care. Do Now, listen, again, I have some systems and some hacks, and I would say, if you're asking for my advice, I would say, probably do it in a fasted state. That's going to maximize your weight loss. However, I don't really care. I want you to get it done. So I got to look for sticky ways for you to get it done. What if your work just doesn't allow you? What if you had to get up at 2 in the morning to get a workout
Yeah.
in? Well, that's not feasible for you. We can't make that happen. I like to nudge clients gently into making these new habits, because it's very difficult to make that change overnight, just because Joel said, well, working out between the times 2 and 5 p.m. are the most times where you have the strongest grip strength. It's like, well, that's great, but how is it going to work in your life?
Yeah,
So,
right.
yeah, again, like I always joke around with people, is exercise and diet, like that's the last thing in my mind. I got a lot of other things I want to work on first.
Okay, so just to clarify the clarity issue, so you want to have a journal, write down your goals. So, what are some typical goals you see with some of your clients that they might write down?
So you usually, again, for us, we're kind of working in an 8-week span. So for them, first of all, I think the big shift is I don't even write down my goals. Whoa. So
Yeah.
I think let's start with that. Now, there's some other concepts too. There was a while where I wasn't even setting goals, and I was really just, again, kind of thinking about, like, who am I trying to be, and living through my values, which is a whole nother concept that I talk a lot about in the course too. But in a simple respect, I would say, if we're talking about just weight loss in this regard, I would say, yeah, like, what's a number? What are you trying to reach, right?
Okay.
And then I like to use affirmations to supplement that with my goal. So that's kind
Yeah.
of like the trick that I like to do. And I found that to be really beneficial for my clients as well as for me and what I'm trying to
Right.
create.
Yeah, I like that. And I feel like the process of writing it down helps you become a little more laser focused than having this kind of vague thing. It's almost like manifesting. You really have to write it down as well. And
100%.
then,
Yeah.
and what you're doing is you're manifesting your future human body. So,
100%. Yep. I
okay.
love that.
So that's great. Okay. So number three.
Number 3 is something I don't ever hear any weight loss person talk about, and
Yes.
and that is detoxing. I again, my mentor, is a naturopath. He is an amazing guy, and let's face it, his background is Ayurveda and orthomolecular medicine, and he does naturopathy. And
Mhm.
the bottom line is though, we are so toxic, and our rain barrel is overflowing with so many things. We are just overwhelmed as Americans. I mean, we have stress, finances, mortgage, marriage issues, kid issues. Then our diet's off, our sleep is off. All these things start to manifest, and we start to fill up that rain barrel. Well, over time, your body's pretty darn resilient, but over time, that rain barrel is going to overflow, and then we're going to start to see symptoms like autoimmunity, leaky gut, whatever. And so I think a really nice thing that I like to do with my clients is take them through a functional medicine detox and really help balance that liver out and open up those pathways. Because when we start to do that, we start to really see, again, the body starts to, I can't say the word heal, but the body, again, I'm a very big proponent in that once the body's balanced, the body knows how to heal. And that's true. There's an innate sense in the body. You just got to give it the right input. So by balancing and really opening up those liver pathways, that by decongesting that and removing some of those toxins, I see so many benefits from that. And I want to be really clear with people. A detox, a good detox is completely different than some kind of juice cleanse. People always get that mistaken. They're like, "Oh yeah, I do that. It's a juice cleanse." Like, no, that's not what I'm talking about. You're not stimulating phase one, phase two detox of the liver. Like, what you're doing is great. I'm glad you did it. The juice cleanse is great. It's gonna be easier on your digestion and give you a lot of micronutrients. So that's great, but don't ever think like you're gonna lose a ton of weight or you detox your body. You didn't. So, yeah, number three is detox.
Yeah, I really love that. I think that's such a huge, huge point that you bring up. That's amazing because I don't hear that frequently. And I often try to work with a lot of my acne patients regarding detoxification. Sometimes when people are losing weight and detoxing, they will have acne because a lot of the toxins are carried in fat. So as fat is,
Big time.
burnt and released, and all the toxins get released into the bloodstream, and we use our skin, our skin, our breath, feces, urine, and women, even menses, to kind of detox from the body. That's how we get rid of things basically our body doesn't want, right? So are there any tips you can give people to try to detox at home, or you really recommend that they work with someone on a one-on-one basis to do this sort of thing?
Yeah, I would say that. I would probably recommend you work with somebody who knows, a little bit in that regard.
Okay. Yeah, I think so too, because it really is so personalized depending on, heavy metals or, whatever else is going on with you. But that's huge because you can see people. I mean, we're just swollen and engorged.
Big time. Yeah.
And it's not even like fat around the waist in some people. It's just an engorgement, a backflow of the liver because the liver can't process everything that we're coming into contact with every day, just in our normal lifestyles.
Yep.
And with plastic being found in the Arctic, it's nearly impossible to avoid a lot of these. In the best case scenario, even if you have 100% organic, the water that's flowing downstream is coming from a non-organic farm, unfortunately. So, yeah, that's a really huge, huge, huge step. Because your body, the more efficient it's going to be, the better for you in this whole process. Okay, so number four.
So number four, I had to put it down. Exercise, right? Now, what type of exercise? I always joke around and make it a point on my Instagram that look at me, I'm only working out for 10 minutes a day. And I do that on purpose because I want to show people that it's not as hard as we think. We make things more than it is. Now, again, before I had kids, my oldest kid is 7, okay? Before I had kids, I was doing CrossFit and jujitsu. And my wife, when we had our first kid, she's like, "You think you're gonna be doing that?" I'm like, "Oh yeah, of course I am." Like, you know me, I'm a hard charger. I can do it all. Whatever I put my mind to, I can do. And boy, was I wrong
You know what?
because
I'm sorry. I
yeah,
haven't
go ahead.
interrupt you because
Yeah,
I thought I would continue to rock climb when I had kids. I'm like, yeah, I'll just put them on my back.
yeah. Why not?
Yeah. And then you're like, oh no, there's going to be rocks on my baby. And, you know, yeah, you just live in the false sense of idealism way before you have kids.
Yeah, I mean, it's like I say this too. People can do it. It just depends, I think, what kind of dad you want to be. I think and it depends where you want to put your energy. And I made a choice that I need to put my energy more towards my kids. And so I was fine with that choice. But that forced me to really start evaluating, again, as a person who likes to move their body daily. I really had to start looking at what can I do that's going to give me the most bang for my buck, right? Like what's the 20%, the 80-20 rule? What's like the 20% that I can do is going to give me 80% of the results? And so it was really just fine tuning it. I'm a big fan personally of doing Dr. Jay Quish's X3 bar. I've interviewed him twice on the podcast. He has a great book called Weightlifting is a Waste of Time. I've been using his product probably for now 5 years. And this is not a plug for his product. I could care less if you guys get it or not. But I think there's a lot, just read the data. I think there's a lot of good information with variable resistance training. And first of all, there is a lot of good information with variable resistance training, coupled with the fact how to exercise, right? And the way I look at exercise is really from a hormonal level. And that is there's two big movers I want, growth hormone and testosterone. So how do I move those the most? Variable resistance gets me that. And I can do 4 different body parts in 10, 15 minutes and I'm done. So I really like doing that. I do a lot of hit training as well. And at the end of the day, none of that matters also. Do what you love. Have a
Yeah.
movement practice, but you got to have a movement practice. I don't care what it is, but you got to have something.
Right. And I mean, chasing around your kids is non exercise activity thermogenesis, which I think we take for granted a lot how important it is to just constantly be moving around the house and vacuuming your own floors and weeding your own gardens and doing all the chores we need to do because all those things burn calories and increase bone density in the long run. And I'm a believer like you for I do cardio like mountain biking and hiking more for mental
Yes.
just mental health and mood boosting. But I find that my body looks its best when I do heavy movements and variable movements. But I'm not familiar with him. So I'm going to listen to that episode on your podcast. And I urge everybody to tune in to Joel's podcast. It's called The Hack Life, and we'll have a link in the show notes as well.
Yeah, really quick, it's funny that you just mentioned that about how much we move and stuff. They did a study with maids and they told one group of maids, they said, "Hey, do you know that you're burning like this many calories a day by all the stuff that you're doing?" And guess what? The control group of maids, they didn't say anything to. They lost no weight. The group that they actually said, they said, "Did you know you're actually losing this much weight?" "No, we had no idea because you're burning all these calories." I forget what the amount of weight, it was like they lost 8 pounds. And
Yep.
so there's two things to that. One is, yeah, like you just said, it goes to like how much we're moving a day, but also it goes back to the beliefs, guys, the concepts that we have in our brains of what we're doing. What is the concept? How do you view yourself? So
Right.
I love that you jog my memory with that study.
Yeah. So when you need to go get something, if you're sitting down reading or watching TV and you want to go get something or pick something up or, pick up your kid's toy, just remember that's promoting, more fitness and more health and weight loss in you. I hate to say weight loss. I know we always have to talk about weight loss. I feel like weight loss is useless without building muscle because muscle gives us our shape and our form and our strength and that leads to longevity because we know sarcopenia is associated with morbidity and mortality and there's so many devices in the skincare aesthetic industry that try to burn fat and I'm kind of anti all of them until like the M Sculpt came out because the M Sculpt and the Neo they build muscle which also burns fat. So just remember the more muscle you build, the better shape you're going to have because it's the scale doesn't matter so much. It's the shape and the way you look. And also that muscle is like burning tons of calories at rest without you even moving. So that's kind of the key. I like that. So that's why we do exercise. So the last thing that I think people really want to do is just get on those machines at the gym for hours and hours. It doesn't do you a service. And
Again, I mean, I think having a movement practice is key. So I have in my program, I have it all structured out and I give you that. But at the end of the day, if you have nothing, imagine if you're starting from zero. I always think about starting with somebody who is doing nothing.
yeah,
I don't care what. So that's why I said I want you just to have a movement practice. But yeah, again, if your goal is weight loss, I would never do cardio. But if it's something you enjoy, then yeah, you should do it. Of course, if it makes you happy, do it. But if the goal is weight loss specifically, then I think you're spinning your wheels with cardio personally.
yeah, I agree. Okay. So number 5.
Number 5 is really the types of foods you're going to eat, right? Like, what is the perfect diet? Now, I'm not keto. I'm not carnivore. I'm not bulletproof. I'm not any of those things. I like them all and I use them all, but I'm never going to be like, this is the one. Okay. So the perfect diet for you, everyone's going to be, it's going to be a bio individuality kind of issue. However, I would just say this: big ideas. We need to have some big bullet points for like what type of diet we eat. And the big ideas are this, guys. You better stay away from vegetable oils. Those are just the devil. I was just on a
Hmm.
call the other day talking to somebody about this: canola oil, grapeseed oil, cottonseed oil. It's fascinating because in all these products, they're snuck in there, and you have to really look at the labels. Sunflower oil, which is not too bad, but I mean, they're all there. So stay away from vegetable oils. And then, very simply, I know this is going to sound crazy, but stay away from sugar. Now,
Oh
you know,
no.
yeah, I mean, I'm sorry, but stay away from it. You know, sugar is, here's the funny thing too. I
It's
talk with,
heroin in your mouth.
yes, yes, thank you. Took the words right out of my mouth. Here's the thing: sugar, and funny thing with clients too is they're like, well, what about this piece of fruit? I'm like, yeah, don't eat it. Now, I'm being kind of funny with them, but I think we do need to just kind of keep an open mindset of like, in general, like fruit is sugar, guys. Like it was designed to make us fat in the summertime or to hold that glycogen in our system so that in the wintertime when we're hibernating and not eating as much, we had that, we had that to use as energy as a source of fuel. So I always just try to remind people there's so many other aspects of sugar, debating where you live and what latitude you're in the world. But just in general, when we're talking about fruit, like again, there's certain things we can do, and I don't want to. I don't. I'm being kind of funny when I say don't eat fruit, but yeah, I mean, I think we eat too much of it as Americans. That's the one thing I would say.
Hmm. So no vegetable oils, no sugar.
Yeah, and I really go off of Catherine Arnstein's book. So eat fermented and sprout foods, and then eat organs. And I'm sorry, not Catherine Arnston. Doctor Shanahan. Sorry.
Oh, okay,
She
wait. So eat sprouted. Yeah, I love sprouted. Okay, so
fermented
sprout.
or fermented or sprouted foods. I'd say there's four big principles when you're thinking about
Okay.
trying to construct a diet for yourselves. And one is stay away from vegetable oils, stay away from sugar as much as you can, right? Try to have some good fermented and sprouted foods in your diet. And then the last one is try to eat, eat fresh food, but eat organ meats and good quality meats.
Okay. Yeah, my goal this year is really to try to incorporate organ meats. And I don't know how I'm going to do it. I had someone on the podcast and we talked about recipes and things like that, and sourcing it is even a challenge for me, unless I go behind the butcher counter and start digging away and asking them. Do you believe in like supplementing with like liver capsules or anything like that, or you believe in just eating the real food?
I think, I mean, hey, if you can get the real food, is always going to be better. I think
Of
supplements
course.
are great. I'll be honest, I haven't experimented too much with them to say for sure if you're, I would hate this because I haven't done it. So I haven't done the experiment on myself.
Right.
But I think there's some, Dr. Paul Saladino's he seems to be revving up. He's pretty passionate about it. So I'm sure
Hmm.
he's got some good stuff. And I think, yeah, I think supplements are probably fine because again, you're supplementing something, meaning you're not getting it normally.
Right.
So,
Yeah. Yeah. The only problem with fermented for me is I have like a histamine sensitivity.
mm,
So I don't do well with fermented. And I always get a little pissed off at myself because I don't feel well afterwards. And I know it's so good for you. And we were talking about Andrew Huberman before the podcast, and he talks in his podcast about a research study, and I hope I'm not quoting it wrong, comparing fiber to fermented foods and improving your gut microbiome. And fiber did nothing to help improve your gut microbiome compared to small servings of fermented food daily. So,
interesting.
yeah, I mean, I really do think the cultures that eat a lot of fermented food, they have a much healthier lifestyle than we do because we kind of shy away from it. And then sprouts, like broccoli sprouts with sulforaphane, are so huge as part of even that detox program
Yeah.
because of, the stage two liver detoxification, enhancing that to kind of get things moving along for eliminating them out of your body. So, yeah, sprouts are great and they could be added to so many things. What's your take on dairy?
I I would say here's the thing. Here's the thing. I mean, at the end of the day, I go back and forth because there's things like raw milk that I do like.
Mhm.
However, at the end of the day, gluten and dairy are the top two allergies.
Yeah.
That's just the fact of the matter. And so if here was what we talked about. When the body's balanced, it can do anything. So, and I really truthfully believe that. That's not just something I'm saying. Like, no, I believe that. So again, if your rain barrel is not that full and you're pretty balanced and your health isn't really good, I think you can eat it. I think you can do it. You can get away with it. Now, again, most people that are coming to see me, we're talking about weight loss. So, am I going to have them drink dairy, which we see all these inflammatory proteins like casein? No, absolutely not, because they might even come to me with leaky gut and other things, and that's just going to exacerbate the situation. So, for me, I would stay away from it. Obviously, things like butter, I'm a huge fan of, and I would eat as much butter as you possibly can.
Yeah, when
Uh,
I go to restaurants, I ask them frequently what they're using for oil because the vegetable oils, like you mentioned, they're just so cheap and they're everywhere. And I'll
Most
often make
restaurants
sure,
cut it too. They usually cut their olive oil with canola oil and stuff. So
right?
it's
Yeah. So I
tough.
have them just use butter instead or ghee if it's even
Yeah,
available.
smart.
Yeah, that's great. Okay, that's really great. It's so funny as you're talking about sugar and the addiction properties, and I'm sure you've seen those functional MRI studies where, they give people sugar and it lights up in the brain the same place that heroin lights up in the brain.
Yeah.
So it's really as addicting as a drug that people go to detox centers for. So I think when people are trying to get off sugar, don't be so hard on yourself. Like realize this is a drug that you have to actually go through a process of withdrawal until you start feeling good, and then you'll feel better than ever. And my son, when he was 2 or 3, I remember he saw a commercial. I think it was like an Oreos commercial on TV. And he turns to me, he goes, "They're just trying to get me to buy their stuff, mom." I said, you're right. Remember that when you want to eat those things. And I sometimes will think of that when I have a craving, like, no, I'm not going to fall prey to this industry that wants to take my money by giving me cheap food that has no nutritional value and high caloric density, but no nutrition and nothing that's going to feed my body and make me feel good, because they've got that bliss point down to a science. So it could taste good for 2 minutes in my mouth and then last in my waist for a really long time. So, yeah.
Yeah, you hit it on the head. I mean, there's a book out there that I'm reading right now called The Dorito Effect.
Oh,
And the
gosh.
author goes into such great detail about, and like you said, I love that you said that. It's not your fault, guys. No, it's not, because we're being bombarded with all this, what do you call it? Like, not just the mainstream media, but I mean, it's really like psychologically, they know what they're doing. But anyways, the way they process these foods, the natural flavors and chemicals, guys, they have it down to such a science to trigger dopamine levels in your brain and do all these things. It's beyond the normal, what like a normal sugar you can get from like a berry or something. So
Hmm.
when you taste something like a fruit or something bitter like a vegetable, we are so not used to it. Our taste buds have been reformatted by all these other foods. And if you're suffering from like leaky gut or candida overgrowth, yeah, candida is a huge reason for like cravings. So yeah, you're right. If you have that leaky gut and you don't know about it, man, you're right. It's hard for you, just from a biological level, to just be like, oh yes, I'm using Joel's mindset techniques, but it's not working. No, biologically, you're feeling those gut buddies are saying, feed me sugar, I need more.
Right. And it's normal. You're not alone.
Normal.
And I remember when I did my first NPC competition, and you have to like restrict your diet so much. And celery started tasting really sweet and salty. It was kind of fascinating. So your palate can change over time to the point where then when you have that really sweet dessert, it actually tastes too sweet. It doesn't even taste good anymore. So just kind of stick with it. How long do you find that it takes your clients to reset their palate? Like 4 or 6 weeks?
So I would say this. I would say, we go through a nice 3-week detox. So I would say after the detox, most of my clients are feeling pretty on point. It's amazing to me that some of the things they're like, dude, you were right. I don't, my, their taste buds have changed. Their level of food sensitivities have changed. Things that they were able to eat prior, they're now able to, they couldn't eat prior because they'd have some kind of reaction, food sensitivity issue. They're now able to eat. So yeah, I would say, yeah, like you said, about 3 to 4 weeks. It just
Oh,
kind of
that's great.
depends. Yeah.
Yeah, that's really great. Okay, so we talked quite a bit about food because it's important.
Yeah.
Okay, 6.
6, I would say blood sugar. And, there you are wearing your continuous glucose monitor, your CGM. So I got a CGM not too long ago from Levels. And, I interviewed the founder, Josh Clemente, recently on my podcast from Levels. Great guy. And I think blood sugar and glucose and insulin, I think it's just when you look at, let's just face it, let's just talk about what's going on in the world right now. I don't know if I'm allowed to say the COVID word, but
Plague.
if
It's the plague.
the plague, thank you. So
I'm
if you
sorry.
look at what happened with the plague, right? I want to say, first of all, like 40% of Americans are obese, which is just shocking. And then the numbers for people that were affected by the plague, all these people had comorbidities, right? We know, and it's like heart disease, diabetes, uh, you know, high cholesterol, blood pressure, all these issues. To me, all these issues are all blood sugar dysregulation issues. They're all metabolic issues. And so, if we can really control our blood sugar and find out what foods are causing our blood sugar to spike in enormous ways, and that's why you have the monitor on you to keep you. You even told me, hey, to keep me accountable, to because it's like you gamifying it. You're like, oh man, I don't want to see my blood sugar go past 150 or whatever it is, because that means I probably had too many sweets or I did something that wasn't impactful for my diet. So I think you have it. You're doing some good things there. I think that's really smart. Getting a CGM, I highly recommend that. I think it's probably one of the best biohacks. There's so many out there, but in terms of just really getting some good data on yourself, I think having a continuous glucose monitor, if you can get one, is a pretty good idea.
Yeah, I think they're gonna become more accessible. If you can get one from your doctor, that's great. It's a prescription. It's very easy. You put it in your arm. There's a tiny little needle there. It's as thin as a hair. It doesn't even hurt at all when you implant it, and it stays on for 2 weeks. And you can read your blood sugar with an app that holds the data for 8 hours. And I love what Levels is doing, getting this in the hands of people, because they're just, it's shocking. I mean, I was a nutrition major. I'm a doctor. I thought I understood my body. I knew there were certain times I didn't really feel good. And I have kind of that gene that I'm more prone to diabetes. So if I was overweight, I probably would have diabetes. I'm not very carb tolerant. And I mean, things like white rice, which is no surprise. And I know Levels has like their top 5 things that they're seeing that people have blood sugar spikes with. Like white rice, if I have sushi, I'm doomed. I could have, it's really depressing. I could have sashimi, but the white rice is awful. Sweet potatoes, unfortunately, have been awful for me as well. And then anything with flour, basically. And it makes sense because it's just sort of like an infusion of you know overly processed carbohydrates will shoot me in the 200s. So for those of you who care about aesthetics and wrinkles are related to AGEs, or advanced glycation end products, and that's basically related to how much sugar over a long period of time is circulating in your bloodstream. And those AGEs, the advanced glycation end products, they stick to the collagen and all the proteins in your body, like blood vessels, behind your eye blood vessels, the blood vessels on your nerves, and that makes everything stiff and immobile and unable to function. So that's why you lose the suppleness of your skin, and you don't have great vision, and people who have really bad diabetes lose the circulation to their legs and things like that. So blood
Big
sugar
time.
regulation is really important, and little things like a teaspoon of sugar will make you jump up to 200-300. So we're not really joking when we say that sugar's kind of the enemy. We don't need to have sugar. Your brain doesn't need glucose. You can convert enough glucose for your brain from protein and complex carbohydrates from vegetables.
Yeah,
Okay, sorry.
well said.
Sorry for the rant.
Amen, sister.
So, and the other thing I noticed, this is really interesting with the glucose monitor, is um my sugar would go up, right? My glucose levels would go up to, let's just say, 150. And then my insulin would come out. So my pancreas produces a healthy amount of insulin to say, whoa, we don't want the sugar in Jen's bloodstream. We're going to put it back into her muscles and into her fat stores and her liver and suck it back in. And now all of a sudden I get a sugar drop and I'd be starving. And I just ate an hour ago. So this
Yeah.
is why we're hungry every 2 hours when we're having high carbohydrates.
Yeah, there's an old bodybuilder who passed away. He's a big biohacker actually himself, Charles Poliquin, and he would say you got to earn your carbs, and so I like that.
Right? Yeah, that's good, especially coming from a bodybuilder. Yeah. I like that. Okay, so blood sugar regulation, the Levels app. Listen to Joel's podcast with the Levels founder. That was actually a really good podcast. I listened to that episode, and yeah. Okay, see if you can get one for yourself.
Yeah.
7.
7, fasting, intermittent fasting, huge. I'm sure everyone's tired of hearing about it because it's just yeah, fasting. But here's the deal, guys. They have shown from studies that if you they did a study with mice and they had mice eat for like 24 hours or whatever. It was like the same amount of calories. So you have two groups of mice. They each get the same amount of calories. One group gets it in a 24-hour setting throughout the day. The other group gets it in a compressed 8-hour window. So this restricted time eating window. That the time restricted eating group for the mice, they saw drops in weight, they saw better lipid profiles, and biologically they were metabolically they were way better, and they had the same amount of calories, but all it was compressed into this 8-hour window. I love that. I mean, growth hormone is going to increase. We know growth hormone is going to help with lipolytic effects, meaning it's going to destroy fat and it's going to help repair muscle. I mean, you can't beat it. And one of the things you start to learn through fasting is I don't really need a snack all day. Oh my God, I was just eating because I was told to eat, or it was based on routine. It had nothing to do with how you really felt.
Yeah, it's interesting because kids naturally fast too. Like my kids will just be like, I'm not hungry. And then they wake up, they're like, I'm not hungry. And then they come from school and they're hungry. So, like, my one son, he's 14 now, and he literally eats between like 3 p.m. and 7 p.m. every night,
Wow.
except on week. I know. And
Oh,
it's,
mad. He's a one meal a
it's,
day guy.
he's really, well, he's a 4 hour meal with including like 6 pounds of meat. you know? But I mean, it's interesting because they don't think like, oh, I need to eat all the time. So I feel like they naturally do it. So are you more of a fan of the 24-hour fast or the 36-hour fast or 72-hour fast, or are you more of a time restricted eating fan?
I really like, okay, so I've yet to do a 36-hour fast for me, and that's on my list of things to do. And that's just because of my crazy schedule with my kids and stuff. And if you know my wife, she is an amazing cook.
I knew you were going to say that.
And if she, and if I tell my wife, oh, sorry, babe, I'm not eating tonight because I'm on this 36-hour fast that I'm doing, she's going to crush me, guys. Okay. And so the time I think, when I get some time that I'm going to be gone for 3 days or something like that, then I will do that. But until then, I don't have that opportunity. So I really like mixing in 24-hour fast weekly. I think it's a great longevity hack. I think it's just a good thing to do. We see the effects from 24-hour fast. It's going to help with that autophagy and just replacing and recycling old cells. So I think it's really good. And then in general, yeah, I think, going into some kind of restricted eating phase throughout the week is a pretty solid idea.
Yeah, I don't I haven't been able to get to 36 hours. I don't find 24 is too hard, especially if I do like 3 p.m. to 3 p.m. or 5 p.m. to 5 p.m.
Yep.
because I'm not going to bed really hungry either night, but I haven't had the courage to do the 36-hour yet. And David Sinclair, who does all this work on autophagy and mitophagy and longevity, he says it really kicks in at 72 hours, and he hasn't been able to go for 24 hours. So that doesn't make me feel so awful.
Yeah.
And then for women, I just want women to realize, like, for men doing like 18 hours of no eating and then 16 hours eating, or a 8-hour eating window is easier. But women, it really depends on your cycle. So like the week before your period, you're not going to, that's your carb week. That's kind of you're not going to want to intermittent fast that week. It's really awful and very difficult. Like weeks 2 and 3 seem to be the best. Is that what you find with your clients?
Yeah. It's funny and I love that you said that. I just interviewed Dr. Mindy Pels, and she's huge on what you just talked about.
Okay.
And yeah, it works. So I'm a big fan. Yeah.
Right. And I think as long as you keep your body confused and you're not doing the same thing,
Yeah.
it doesn't adjust, and then it becomes that much more effective. That's yeah, my experience with that. Especially for women, because we do cycle quite differently from men. Men have a 24-hour cycle and we have a 28-day cycle for the most part. So,
Yeah.
okay, so number 8. These are
Uh,
great.
yeah. Stress. So stress in the nervous system. Okay. I think here's the deal. I also do electric stim therapy using a machine called the Newbie. It's made by New Fit Company. They've been on Dave Asprey's podcast, and they're at all the biohacking conferences. Here's the deal, and we've seen it before in a lot of studies, but the bottom line is if you're not in a parasympathetic state, meaning you're not in this rest, relaxed state, your body will not heal. So nervous system is huge. Now, for a lot of what I do is I'm usually dealing with people in chronic pain. Like, I mean, they have MS, or they had surgery or something, or they're frozen soldier, or they can't, they can't move in certain directions. And so all pain is a perception. I'm sorry. Yeah. Pain is a response from the body and the brain perceiving pain in that area. So that's the reason why, let's say I like to give the example of your shoulder not going overhead. It's your brain's perception of like something is there's I'm scared. Like I don't want to move in that direction because I'm going to hurt something. I'm going
Mm.
to hurt that Joel's shoulder even more. So I'm not going to allow him. I'm not going to send the right signals to that direction. So what we see by using the direct current, the electrical stim, we get amazing results because we start to change the input of way the body and the brain perceives that pain response, and it disappears because we input it with the direct current, which is what your body is. Your body is electric. Your body is a direct current. And so that just reminds me again, that facet of the nervous system that we really need to be mindful of. You don't need to necessarily go get a new fit treatment, but to balance your nervous system. But again, we talked earlier about meditation. So do you have some type of practice that can get you into this rest, relaxed state? I think we need to be very cognizant of, because we're all hard chargers, I think, on the go, on the go, on the go. And so stress is a big one.
Yeah, and even simple breathing. Like I find if I'm in traffic or in the grocery line, and I was doing Andrew Wild's 4-7-8 breath for a long time. And I was
Yeah.
listening to Andrew Huberman's podcast. I'm really into him right now, if you can't
Yeah.
tell.
Yeah. Andrew
He's
who?
just, I
Yeah.
know. I know. I just discovered him yesterday. I'm like, oh my gosh, I love his brain. Which he's a neuroscientist. I should like his brain. But
Yeah.
so and he talks about just different types of breathing and what it does. And somebody else I had spoken with on my podcast, she spoke about doing like in, out as like a reset. But I find like the 4 in, 7 hold, 8 out is quieter to do in the grocery line. So breathing though really does help kind of reset, and it's the cheapest and easiest hack, right? And then there's all those other sorts of things. And it's interesting what you're saying about stress, because I find like when I do a podcast, for instance, because I'm a little anxious and nervous, my glucose jumps up to like 130, right? Because the
Yeah.
cortisol kind of, pushes that sugar out. It's preparing you to run, but I'm not running anywhere. I'm just sitting here. So that
Yeah.
sort of sets up the bad feedback for, having high sugar levels. And then also when you don't sleep, it kind of, which I'm sure you're going to talk about, kind of
That's the next
maybe.
one.
Oh, is it? Okay.
How do it's like you took my notes.
Go ahead. Okay. So number 9, we'll just
Yeah,
get
so
into
number
it.
number 9 is sleep. Number 9 is sleep. You had this clairvoyance. You saw that.
Thanks to
So
40 years of Zen.
yeah. So there's a great book out there by Matthew Walker, and that book, it's called Why We Sleep. That book
Mm.
blew me away, but I'll give you the Cliff Note version. As adults, we need about 7 hours of sleep. And I didn't want to believe that. I was a guy who was probably getting 6 on a regular basis. And I mean, I don't think 6 is bad, but I thought I was like doing great. I'm like 6 hours. I mean, first responder, like that's a lot of sleep in my opinion. 2 kids, like I think I'm doing great. And it was amazing for me. Him in his book, he details out the difference between just a 6 hour person and a 7 hour. It's incredible. But you hit the nail on the head just talking about cortisol. And when I think about sleep, I think about on a hormonal level too. I mean, that's really when we start to repair. A lot of hormonal processes are going on. The balance of, again, cortisol. And we don't, I think as Americans, I don't think we do a great job of prioritizing that. And
Yeah, and the studies showing that people who did all the same things pretty much, but the one group slept more, they lost 15 pounds more. Right? Can you talk
yes,
about that a little bit?
I don't have that study pulled up.
I know it's
But
something like that. Like literally, there is no difference between the groups besides the fact that one group slept more than the other group. They slept an adequate amount, I think 8 hours versus 6 or whatever, but they lost 15 pounds, and there was like the same amount of exercise, same amount of eating, all of that stuff. That's how vital sleep is in weight loss. So if you want to lose weight, focus on your sleep.
yeah, it's crazy. I mean, it's just crazy too. I mean, they show like how much if you lose like an hour of sleep like each day, and then you end, let's say, the week with, so each day you've slept under, let's say, the 6 hours or 5, let's say you got 5 hours every day, like it's like he says, I think at the end of the week, it's like you being drunk at some point. I mean, it's incredible to think like And again, we operate like this all the time. We don't even think about it. We're like, no, I'm fine. I'm doing great.
Right.
And I think you are probably for a while until your body is no longer resilient. And that's why how often do we hear people say at 30, this happened? Oh my God, at 40, this is what happened to me. Yeah, because for the last 10 years, you were just trashing your body.
It's so true. Sorry, I'm trying to find the study. It's going to drive me a little crazy until I find it. But you know, the the bottom line is it makes a big difference. So, and it really is the only variable. You know, if you only change sleep, that will do you some good. And I think it has to do with like the neurotransmitters and the hormones and everything that you talked about that happens when you're sleeping, as far as renewing and repairing and kind of resetting and even some detoxification processes. Okay. So
Oh, I think
prioritize your
that's
sleep
great.
and you can't make it up.
Yeah. Now, here's I think here's one maybe you're looking for. So I pulled up my notes for you. So when given just 5.5 hours of sleep opportunity, more than 70% of the pounds lost came from lean body muscle fat, lean body muscle, mass muscle, not fat. Switch to the group that offered 8.5 hours of time in bed each night, with well over 50 of the weight loss coming from fat while preserving muscle. So that's at least one that's from the book Why We Sleep. That was one
That's
of my the
beautiful.
notes that I wrote down. Also for men, 29% lower sperm count than those obtaining a full restful night of sleep. So there you go.
Wow. Yeah. Well, yeah. And that's, I mean, that's what cortisol does. Cortisol will eat up your muscle and increase your fat around your waist, especially. So, that's what it's showing with the sleep, really, is that it's kind of promoting fat deposition and removing, muscle mass, which we want our muscle.
Yeah. Hell yeah,
Yeah.
we do.
Okay. 10. Can I
10.
guess? Can I make a
Go ahead.
guess?
Yeah, you're on
Is it going to
fire.
have to do with alcohol?
No.
Oh,
I get that all the time though. People DM me and they're like, "Hey, how can I continue my drinking habit and lose weight?" I'm like, "Let me post something for you. Hold on. Let me get I got something. I'm going to get something out there for you." Alcohol
okay.
is huge though. It's funny because when I had my CGM on, even though I'm a big red wine fan. I love red wine. I like to just have a glass a night with dinner. It's not that it just it makes me feel good. It's like kind of like coffee. I don't need coffee
Makes
to
you
be energized. I just enjoy the taste.
Yeah, since we can't go to Europe, we like to feel like we're in Europe.
Yeah. And so I was drinking the Dry Farms wines,
Mm.
which, they tout for being low sugar or like the zero sugar or very low sugar. And it's amazing though how much my blood glucose response would shoot up even with some wine. So
It went
uh,
up.
yeah, it did go up.
Mine drops. My
Oh,
blood
really?
glucose drops. It tanks with wine. Like
Oh,
I'll,
wow.
I dropped to like 58.
Wow.
I know.
I need to go drink your wine.
I don't know. It's
You have
just
the
fine.
fat loss wine.
Well, I think that's not really necessarily good because then it makes you hungry and then you overeat.
Yeah.
When if you didn't have the wine in the first place, your body would regulate. So, what it might look good on the number, but when you understand the physiology behind it and the biology behind it, you're like, oh yeah, no, not a good thing.
Yeah.
Okay, so what's 10? Let us know.
So 10 is habits. Habits and systems, okay?
Yes. Okay.
Yeah. So, I mean, we see it all the time. And again, like I said, when you come see me, I want you to have all of these skills so that when you fall off your path or whatever you're doing, you can simply course correct and get back on there. And so understanding how to build proper habits and formulate systems in your life, I think is huge. It look at is the brain is lazy. Okay. So the brain always goes to the path of least resistance. It looks for those heuristics. It looks for those easy things to do because it wants to make it easy for itself. It makes it just easier for decision making and getting things done. And so if you don't have certain systems in place, you're just going to fall to the highest default of whatever you were doing before. So having good systems in place, having robust habits is really going to help you for the rest of your life, and then including in weight loss.
Yeah, that's interesting. I read somewhere that habits work out better, or new habits, changing habits, when it started on a Monday or the beginning of a month or the beginning of the new year. Do you find that to be true?
I think so. I don't know. I
That's a
don't know.
headspace thing. That's a mindset thing, right?
Yeah, and I would think so. I mean, I don't have the data to say, yeah, you're right. However, I wouldn't be surprised because I think we're just creatures of the Monday. We
Hmm.
like if, for example, if we were like you and I were talking right now, you're like, "Hey, it was great to meet you, Joel. It's Wednesday, and tomorrow, great, we're gonna start my program." You're gonna be like, "How about we start on Monday?" Right? It's just like Thursday, you just don't ever think about starting anything on a Thursday. So, I think a lot of that has to just do with that psychology.
Right? Right? Yeah,
And
exactly.
again, same thing with the New Year's. It makes sense. Like, oh yeah, I'll wait to start losing weight till January 1st. Well, you could do it right now if you wanted, but it's again, we're just so accustomed and in tune with these beliefs and other habits that have been, passed along to us.
Yeah. Do you find that partners, like if one of them starts this, this path, this journey, that other partners jump on, or there's a higher success rate if a couple does it together, or there's more of a failure rate if there's resistance from the other couple? Like, do you see anything like that?
I think it's huge when they do it together because there's this sense of camaraderie. There's this sense of I got you. I'm there. How often, especially with our loved ones, where we're like, oh, you feel like you've been dismissed or they don't have your back.
Yeah.
I know my father had a lot of weight issues, and so often he'd be like, oh yeah, I'm starting another diet, and we would be like, oh yeah, sure, okay, Dad. I mean, we wouldn't say it to his face, but in our back of our minds, we're like, okay, Dad. So imagine, and there's probably people listening to the show that have the same thing where it's like their wife just lost faith in them of like,
Mm,
I don't even know if you can do this anymore. Like, I just
mm.
lost faith. Oh, you're going to lose weight again? Yeah, sure you are. Like, there's that loss of faith. So I think, man, what an impact to have like, hey, we're going to do this together. Or like,
Yeah.
even if, let's say you didn't even need to lose that much weight, it's like, man, I know you got me. And the big thing too is if one person's eating one way and the other person's eating another way, like that's just going to collide, right? So that's not going to work. I
Or if
think
you're
it,
intermittent fasting and you're going out to dinner at 7 o'clock at night, that's really very challenging.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, the one last thing I'll say with that is I have a client right now who I'm working with, and he wants his wife to get on it. And I said, yeah, I mean, yeah, for sure. Like, that's great. However, I'm like, what's awesome is I'm like, he has a couple kids, and like everybody in your family structure sees how you are changing, sees who you're becoming. Like, you are naturally enrolling these people by how strong you are becoming. Like, they are just looking at you as like this beacon of like strength because he's around like donuts and all these things, and he's like, I'm good. And they're looking at him like, who are you? And so I love that. Even if the other person's not doing it, I'm like, the stronger you get and the more changes you make, you start changing the entire dynamics and the culture of your entire house. And like, that is so powerful. Like, your wife or your significant other, they'll just join along with you anyways. They will change by osmosis because of how much you've changed. So,
Exactly. Yeah, that's kind of what I was getting at, because I'm thinking a lot of times people use that excuse of like, well, they're not doing it. I can't keep it up. I don't feel, but part of it. But once people see your better mood and your energy level and all the other things that are happening, it's like a domino effect. And yeah, that's why I wanted to get your opinion, because you've worked with so many people.
yeah.
And it's interesting to me that you could have easily lived this life where you said, oh, well, my dad was fat. It's in my genes. I'm going to be fat too. But that's not your paradigm. So why should it be anyone else's?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's fun. I mean, I never really had the issues with weight, luckily. And I love telling the stories of like, dude, I grew up eating crap food. I had, and it was not again, nobody was. It was just the way we grew up. It was like, what's your lunch for? When I was a kid, it was peanut butter sandwiches on white bread with Capri Suns and Nutter Butters or Twinkies or Ho Hos. Like, those three things were in my lunchbox from, I have no idea, third grade all the way to like eighth grade or something. I mean, I ate like trash. And it's funny because I had an abnormal bone growth in my leg when I was like in fourth grade. So I've been about like 10 years old.
Mm.
And so I'm sure that had to do with blood sugar issues and stuff like that. Now, again, you go to the doctors, the Western MD, they're like, oh, yeah, that's normal. We'll just cut it off. And, anyways, but yeah,
You still have your leg though.
I still have my leg.
Good.
Yeah.
Yeah. I just had like a PTSD moment about lunches, because my mom gave me liverwurst when I was a kid, and I didn't,
Your mom
I,
didn't love you, did she? Yeah.
well, and she said, did you like it? And I didn't want to hurt her feelings. So I said, yes, I loved it. So for 6 months, I had liverwurst until I
Oh
had
my
the courage
God.
to tell her I didn't like it. So part of me thinks I had enough liver for the rest of my life, but I
Yeah.
am going to try the
That's why your
organ.
skin is so beautiful and healthy.
Oh yeah, I'm sure
It's
it's
all that
because of
vitamin A, right?
from the
Yeah.
processed from the
Yeah.
processed deli meat from who knows
Oh, yeah.
where. But yeah, I mean those are really good points. So yeah, I love it. I love everything you said. So how can people work with you?
You know what? The easiest way is there's all these social media platforms. I stay pretty active on Instagram. So you can reach out to me there. It's really me at Joel Evan Coaching. So you can reach out to me there and I'll respond to you. Or you can just go to my website, Joel Evan Coaching, and you can email me there, info at Joel Evan Coaching. That's probably the best way. You can find my podcast on all the major channels, the Hack Life podcast. I interview a lot of cool people like yourself that are in the alternative health world that are doing what I think, I like to say, like disruptive things in either your mindset, your health, or in making you somewhat of a better person, day in and day out.
Yeah, it's really nice to be part of this community where we're just a collective of people trying to share good information to make ourselves and everyone we love and our community healthier. So I'm so grateful for you being here. I have one
Yeah.
last question I ask
Yeah.
everyone.
Yeah.
Okay, how do you
Do I
define
believe in aliens? No.
Oh, that's next time.
Oh,
This
okay.
this time is how do you define radiance?
Ooh. The first thing that came to my mind was
That
what I'm.
that's
Yeah,
that's
the
the
first.
answer.
Yeah, the first thing that's always the answer, right? It's your instinct, which I love to talk about. But the first thing that came to my mind is actually the shirt that I'm wearing, and that's abundance. I think any time, whether you're destroyed, mentally, or you're stressed out, or things are not going your way, or even when things are going your way, it always comes back down to abundance and that abundance mindset because you always have more than you think. There's
Mhm.
always that silver lining, that gratitude. And so it's probably why I'm wearing the shirt to remind myself that of constantly being in that state because it's so easy for us to get triggered and not be radiant. It's so easier for things to go wrong our way. And could this happen to me? But when you retune back into that vibration of abundance, man, anything's possible.
That's gotta be one of my favorite responses, and I love the fact that above abundance on your shirt, it says give more,
Give,
not
yeah, it says give more, and then below it says win
win
more.
more,
Yeah,
receive more. Yeah, because
yeah,
that's how it is. You what you wish upon others is what comes to you.
yeah,
So, yeah, thanks so much for being on the show, Joel. I love, love, love this conversation.
yeah. This was great, Jen. Thank you so much.